Okay, Rabbi Sai, let's get started. We're on Daf Samachay Amud Aleph. And we had this machlokas yesterday between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. When a person sells real estate, does he sell generously or does he sell begrudgingly? Meaning, when he sells, does he completely relinquish all rights, such that if he sells a house, he relinquishes his rights of access even though he retains ownership to the well underneath? Or does he sell begrudgingly, which means that he holds on to rights of access into the house? That was the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. We also learned yesterday that the Amoraim take sides. Rav paskins like the Chachamim, who say that a person sells begrudgingly, and Shmuel holds like Rabbi Akiva, who says that a person sells generously, the ayin yafeh. So the Gemara now says, Amar lei, and this is about the seventh line, Amar lei Ravina l'Ravashi, lema azdu l'taimayu. Ravina asks Ravashi, is this not the same machlokas that they have elsewhere? The Amar of Nachman Amar Shmuel, ha'achin shecholku ein lahem lo derech zeh al zeh, v'lo sulamos zeh al zeh, v'lo chalonos zeh al zeh, v'lo amos hamayim zeh al zeh. So Rav was quoted as, Rav Nachman quoted his Rebbe Shmuel as saying that when two brothers inherit an estate, say they inherit a field, and they want to divide it among themselves. So one brother wants to take the northern part, the other brother wants to take the southern part. When they divide, they completely divide. And what that essentially means is that the one brother says, I'm hereby divesting and completely giving to you any stake that I have in the north field, so that the north field is totally yours. And the brother in the north says, I hereby divest any holding that I might have in the south part, and therefore all of it is yours. They've completely and generously and wholeheartedly relinquished complete and any rights to the other brother's portion, which seems to imply that when a person gives away something, gifts or sells something, he's giving it ba'ayin yafeh, he's giving it away generously. And how do I know that? Because, as Shmuel says, that when the brothers do this, they no longer have access rights. Which means, let's say the guy in the south field can only access his field by going through the north field. So he has to buy that access, because once they've divided, made a clean break. And furthermore, if let's say they divide a house, one brother takes the upper floor and the other brother takes the lower floor, and the lower floor also includes the surrounding property, the brother on the upper floor cannot say, well, I have rights of placing a ladder on your land in order to access my upper floor. No, you don't, because we totally split it, and when we split it, you gave me all rights to the lower level. V'lo chalonos zeh al zeh, and furthermore, we cannot build a structure with a window that looks out to my brother's property, because it's an invasion of privacy, even though previously it was owned by one person, our father. V'lo amas hamayim zeh al zeh. And furthermore, if there's a body of water running through the northern field, the southern field cannot say, well, it's coming to my property, I can take the water from it, or I can divert water from it. So in other words, so you see it's a totally clean break. So Shmuel is therefore consistently holding that when a person sells or gives away something, he gives away generously without maintaining or without holding back any rights at all.
How do you impute something to someone when they didn't sell it? It's totally by default. This is the product of
It isn't default. It is not default.
Oh.
The brothers inherit a property and they
divide expressly.
And then they choose to divide it.
Okay.
You got it?
Okay.
V'hizaru bahen shahalachos kavuos hein. And then Shmuel finishes off his statement by saying, be very careful with this law, because this is very entrenched. In other words, this law is solid. And so you should be aware that whenever there's an exchange like this, it's done completely and without any conditions. V'Rav Omar yesh lahen, and Rav disagrees, and Rav says that all of those rights access rights, water rights, window rights, ladder rights that we had talked about before, I hold that the other brother does have. So it seems like this machlokus of the brothers is the same machlokus as to whether we paskin like Rabbi Akiva or the Rabbanan. And implicit in this statement is the question, why do they need to argue about it twice? So the Rav Ashi answers Trich, I'll tell you why. Di'i ashmu'inan v'hahi v'hahi ka'amar Rav mishum da'amar le bo'ina l'meidar be'ki hechi didaru be'avhasi. He says, because if I only had the machlokus between Rav and Shmuel stated by the case of the brothers who divide the estate, perhaps the reason why Rav says that there are still access rights retained by each brother is because each brother can claim the only reason why I divided it was to have the same utility that my father had. And just like my father could access the southern field from the northern field, my expectation was to do the same. After all, the pasuk in Tehillim says that children take the place, are surrogates for their parents. So if my father had access rights, my expectation is the same. But maybe in a case where it's not two brothers, but rather two strangers, one is a seller and one is a buyer, maybe Rav would agree that it's done ba'ayin yafet, that it's done completely and unconditionally. V'i itmar beha, and if we only had the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel as to whether we paskin like Rabbi Akiva or the Rabbanan, baha ka'amar Shmuel, avol bahach emamodi leila Rav tzricha. Maybe only in that case does Shmuel say that a person sells completely and unconditionally without retaining any access rights. But in the case of two brothers dividing, because of that argument that there's an expectation to use the field in the same way that our father used it, maybe the brothers would retain access rights and water rights, etc. And therefore the Gemara concludes, tzricha, this machlokes had to be discussed in both places. Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Huna, hilchasa kavasein o hilchasa kavasaychu. This is a very interesting interchange between Rav Nachman and Rav Huna. Rav Nachman had quoted Shmuel as saying that a mocher sells ba'ayin yafa, and Rav Huna had quoted Rav, his Rebbe, as saying that a mocher sells ba'ayin ra'ah begrudgingly. And so Rav Nachman, in a very humble way, asks Rav Huna, what's the halacha? Is it like you, or is it like us? So Amar lei hilchasa kavasaychu demekarvisu lebava dereish galusa deshchichi dayani. And in characteristically equally humble form, Rav Huna responds to Rav Nachman, it makes more sense that the halacha should be like you, Rav Nachman, that we go like Rabbi Akiva and a person sells ba'ayin yafa. You know why? Because after all, you, Rav Nachman, are very close to the gate of the Reish Galusa, which means Rav Nachman had married into the Exilarch's family. And as a result, he had a lot of connections to the official government court system and in Bavel, the Jewish court system. So you see a lot of court cases, and therefore you have a familiarity with real life cases more than I do, and therefore it makes more sense that you would have a better handle on what the halacha should be. So that's a very interesting interchange between the two. Itmar, Shnei batim zeh lifnim mizeh, Shneim b'mecher, Shneim b'matana, Ein lahem derech zeh al zeh. So, as a follow-up to this whole discussion, let's say you have two structures, two houses, or two fields for that matter. One is behind the other. In other words, in order to be able to access house B, you have to go through house A. And a person owns, let's call him Ruvain, he owns both houses. He owns house A and he owns house B. And he decides that he's going to give away this property or sell this property. So he sells house A to Ruvain and he sells house B to Shimon. Or another case is that he gives house A to Ruvain and he gives house A to Shimon and he gives house B to Levi. He's Ruvain. Okay. So in both of those cases, the Gemara says, based on what we've just learned before, that we paskin like Rav Nachman and Shmuel, which is like Rabbi Akiva, that a person gives ba'ayin yafeh, so there are no access rights. Neither one has access rights to the other. And even though the person who now owns house B can only access his house by going through house A, but since the seller or the gifter has given it completely to each party, without any retention, without any conditions, the person who now owns house B has no rights of access through house A. And he'll have to buy that access from the owner of house, from the new owner of house A. V'kol shekain chitzon b'matana upnim b'mecher. And this will certainly be true if the outer house, person A, house A, which is sold to Shimon, is given to him as a gift, and house B, the inner house, is sold to Levi. Now, why would that make a difference? What's the difference between a gift and a sale? So let's be clear. When you sell something, even if you hold that you sell it ba'ayin yafa and you completely relinquish ownership, who do you give more generously to? The person that you're selling an item to, or the person that you're gifting an item to? Who do you feel more generosity towards? The person that you're gifting to, because the very fact that you're gifting to that person means that you like him or love him in some way. The person that you're selling to could be a stranger. You found him on Kijiji, right? Whatever, right? So that's, you don't have any connection to that person, but nevertheless, we say you're selling generously, but surely you're gifting generously. So for sure, if you're gifting the house to the outer house to Shimon, and you're selling the house, the inner house, to Levi, then for sure that Levi does not have rights of access through house A. But what about the opposite case? Chitzon b'mecher upnibi b'matan. What would happen if the outer house, house A, is being sold, and the inner house is being gifted? So initially we thought, Savar mina, ein lahen derech zeh al zeh. Initially the thinking was that there too, since the person sells ba'ayin yafa generously, he sells generously, there are no access rights that are withheld by the seller or the gifter, and therefore the guy who bought A owns A completely, the guy who bought B owns B completely, but B has no access rights through house A. However, below, the Gemara says on further thought, that's not true, because Milo Tnan, because later on we'll see in the Mishnah, Bamed Dvarim Amurim B'mocher, Aval B'nosein Matana Nosein Eskulan. That the only time that there's a machlokus between the Chachamim and Rabbi Akiva is only when it comes to a sale. But when it comes to a gift, everyone agrees that a person gives generously. And therefore, even according to Rabbi Akiva, there is also a difference between a gift and a sale. Rabbi Akiva will maintain that both gifts and sales are given generously, but a gift is given more generously than a sale. So in a situation, Alma man diyoiv matana ba'ayin yafe yahiv, hachanami man diyoiv matana ba'ayin yafe yahiv. So when I give a gift, I give it even more generously than when I sell something. And therefore, in a situation where I've gifted house B, the inner house, to someone, and I've only sold house A, the outer house, to another person, the very fact that I'm more generous with house the giftee than I am with the buyer indicates that the giftee will have rights of access through house A, even though I also sold it generously to person B.
In the case of the brothers, what if I say to myself, I want him to have no access rights by me, and I guess I won't have any by him. Does that sound generous?
Yeah, no, it is generous.
Because you're saying you don't want him to have access rights by you, so okay, by the same token, you won't have by him. It just doesn't feel like generous. You're
impugning their motives, but that's not the way we look at it. When we're dividing, we're dividing completely and irrevocably and unconditionally. Right. I'm relinquishing all rights in the northern property, and you're relinquishing all rights in the southern property. That's implicit. We're not trying to retain, we're not trying to hold back anything. That's the idea. If we're not looking at it as, well, what was my motive for doing that? Because so I'll give him everything so that he won't have anything in mine. That's nefarious. You're attaching nefarious objectives to something that's completely neutral in the Gemara. We have two brothers, they're dividing. The psychology is that we assume that when they divide completely and wholly. Simply because in a positive light, when people divide, they divide completely. And when people sell, they sell completely.
I'm not trying to impugn this. I'm just trying to say when there's an initial case, when we said someone sells a house to someone else, he's not in turn getting something back where you could say, okay, and what did he hold for himself?
I hear what you're saying.
No,
it's a valid point. You could make that argument, and maybe you could say that that's the reason why they had to argue in both cases. But the Gemara says an even better reason. Right. The Gemara's reasoning is because the Yerusha might be different because we want to use it in the same way that it was used previously. Right. Okay, let's go on to the next Mishnah. Hamocheres habayis mocheres hadeles avaloes hamafteach. Rashbam says, before we look at the specific cases, the general rule of this Mishnah is that when you sell a house, anything that is attached to the ground of the house or to the structure of the house is included in the sale. So when you sell a house, the door is included. You can't detach. Now, by the way, this is an important issue because this has ramifications to real estate law. Let's say you buy a house and there's built-in cabinets in the house. All of a sudden, you come to take possession. Like when I bought my house, there were huge holes in the wall because there was the guy had built-in speakers in the wall. So Gesundura, hey, take the speakers. That wasn't my intention. But to buy a house that's filled with holes in the wall, at least fill in the holes so that I have something to,
What happened?
So I told the realtor they have to fill in the holes.
They did, right?
They filled in the holes, but it wasn't, all right, anyway. I got a lot of Zecher Lamikdashis in my house. Let me put it to you that way. Okay. But anyway. But that's the thing, is that essentially that's really the Mishnah is telling you the halacha. When you buy a house, anything that's attached to the walls or the structure or the floor of the house is included in the sale. So a door is included in the sale. But anything that's movable is not included in the sale. So there's a key. If the key is in the door, but the key is removable, it's not included in the sale. Huh. Okay. Now we're talking obviously not keys like we have nowadays. We're talking about keys that are interchangeable with other doors. It's not like today we have every door has a unique key lock. They didn't have sophisticated systems like that back in the times of the Gemara. Okay. In a similar vein, if there's a mortar in the house, if it's attached to the ground, so then it's considered part of the sale. If it's movable, it's not part of the sale. When you have a mill in the house, so the itztrobil, which is they used to construct a little barrier around the mill, so that's embedded in the ground, so that's included in the sale. You can't all of a sudden pick out, let's say a little lattice work around the mill is included in the mill sale. But the keles, which they translate as the hopper, basically it's like a funnel which you use to pour the grain into the mill apparatus. Since that's removable, that's not included in the sale. Veloes hatanur, veloes hakirayim. Ovens and stoves are not included in the sale because those are not attached to the ground and they're removable. Okay? Bisman shomer lahu v'chol ma shebesocho harei kulan mechura. But if part of the stipulation of the sale is that I sell you the house and everything that's in the house, then all of the aforementioned, even movable appliances, are part of the sale. Now, the Rashbam points out that does not mean that by adding that clause, the buyer should feel entitled to get everything, like the beds and the chairs and the furniture. He says there are certain things, it's only including the major appliances that are necessary for the operation of the house. But smaller appliances and also like smaller pieces of furniture that are not attached to the ground, those things are not included in the sale. Even when you say everything that's in the house, because what you mean by everything that's in the house is all those things that are necessary for the house to be operational and functional. Okay. Lema masnisin deloka Rebbe Meir. Let us suggest that our Mishnah is not like Rebbe Meir, because the Rebbe Meir ha'amar machar es hakerem machar tashmishe kerem. Rabbi Meir says elsewhere that if a person sells a vineyard, included in the sale of the vineyard are all of the accoutrements of the vineyard, including, let's say, the sticks that are used to hold the vines up. Now, those are movable. So according to our Mishnah, they should not be included in the sale. So it seems like our Mishnah is not like Reb Meir. So the Gemara says, no, afilu tema Rebbe Meir hasam kavia hachalo kavia. The answer is that our Mishnah could agree with that, because the sticks of a vineyard are not meant to be moved off the property. They're fixed on the property. Maybe our Mishnah is saying that only those things that could be moved off the property, like a stove or a key, are not included in the sale. But it could be things that are not attached to the ground are included in the sale, as long as they're never meant to be removed off the premises. But wait a minute, says the Gemara. But that's not going to work out with the example of the key, because the Mishnah had contrasted the door with the key, which implies that the key is attached to the door in some way. In other words, it's a key that's meant to be, you have different kinds of keys. There are some keys that are used as deadbolts, like they're attached to the deadbolt structure. And so it sounds like this kind of key that we're talking about in our Mishnah is in the door. So even though it's taka removable, but it's not meant to be taken out of the door structure, because you need it in order to ever lock this door. So it seems like because it's movable, even though it's not meant to be removed from the premises, it's not included in the sale, which is not like those sticks. So Ela machvarta masnisin delo karib meir. So the Gemara says, you're right. We'll have to conclude that it makes more sense to say that our Mishnah is not reconcilable with Rebbe Meir. Tanu Rabbanan, hamocher es habayis mocher es hadeles ve'es hanagar ve'es haman'ul avalo es hamaftech. So the Brisa now says, it's going to say slightly differently from our Mishnah. This Brisa says that when you sell a house, included in the sale is the door, the nagar and the manul. Nagar and manul are two parts of the lock structure. Maybe one's a lock and one's a stock, or one's a deadbolt. It's, a nagar is the Rashbam says, bariach v'kavua b'kosel. It's like a lock that is embedded in the wall, and a manul sounds like it's embedded in the door. Kavua b'delis, right? It's embedded in the door. It's sort of like a stock, the wood that goes down, perhaps. Avalo is hamaftech, but the maftech, the key which is removable, is not included. Mocher es hamachtesh es hachakuka avalo es hakavua. And here's where the Brisa diverges from our Mishnah, because our Mishnah had said that as long as something is attached to the ground, it's included in the sale. But here the Brisa says no, it depends. If the machteshes, if the mortar is carved out of the wall, like you carve out some kind of concave structure to use as a mortar to crush spices, but it's carved out of the wall, so then it's part of the sale. You can't remove it afterwards. But if it is something that was built separately and then cemented to the floor or to the wall, then it's not included in the sale and it can be removed. Mochar ha'itztrobil avaloes hakeles. But then we go back to being consistent with the Mishnah. The itztrobil, which is the fence around the mill, is part of the sale, but not the keles, the hopper, that funnel. Loes hatanur veloes hakiraim, an oven small or big is not included in the sale because they're movable. Veloes harechayim, and a mill is not included in the sale either, but which is also different from our Mishnah, because our Mishnah had said that a rechayim, which is attached to the ground, is included in the sale. And that's why Rabbi Eliezer says, Kol ha'mechuber lekarka harei kekarka. He says, no, anything that's attached, even if it's cemented afterwards to the ground, is part of the sale. Bisman shomer lahu v'chol masha b'socha harei kulan mechurin. But then the Brisa says, like our Mishnah, that as if, however, included in the wording of the sale agreement, the purchase agreement, it was stated that I'm selling you the house and everything in the house, then all of the major appliances are included, even the things that are movable. Bein kach uvein kach, lo mocher lo es habor, velo es hadus, velo es hayatzia. But even when he writes that verbiage, not included in the sale is the well that's underneath the house or a shed that is adjacent to the house. Now, Tanu Rabbanan. Now let's look at the next Brisa. Tzinor shechikako ulabasov kivao posel es hamikva. Kivo ulabasov chikako eno posel es hamikva. So I have an interesting Brisa. The Brisa talks about a block of stone that you're going to be turning into an aqueduct. And the way you turn it into an aqueduct is you take tools and you carve out a concave indentation so that it can be now used as an aqueduct to be able to divert water to a pool which you want to create. But let's say you want to make a mikveh. So you have to make sure that this pipe that you're constructing does not have the status of a kli. The only way that it does not have the status of a kli is if it's attached to the ground, and therefore it's part of the ground and not considered to be a separate kli. Because if it's a separate kli, then the water that is collected by it is considered to be mayim she'uvim, drawn water, and therefore it's not kosher for a mikveh. And here the Brisa tells us a machlokas. If you have a pipe that you first create that concave indentation, and then afterwards you attach it to the ground, that's considered to be a kli because it was a kli before it was attached to the ground, and therefore the water that's collected by it is not kosher for a mikveh. However, kiva'o, let me just see, let's see, where does he, however, shall eitz or shall evan, right? It's made out of either wood or stone, that's what Rashbam says. However, kiva'o l'vasov chikako, but let's say if you first attach a block of wood or stone to the ground before you carve out that groove, so therefore it's completely convex. It's not a kli at all. And then you attach it to the ground, and then you carve out the aqueduct. So then, eino posel es mikvah. That does not make the mikvah possible. So now our question is money, lo Rebbe Eliezer v'lo Rabbanan. So the question is, this brisa, which makes a distinction as to whether the aqueduct was carved before or after it was attached to the ground, seems to go neither like Rebbe Eliezer nor the Chachamim. So which machlokas Rebbe Eliezer and the Chachamim are you talking about? So our initial reaction is that it's referring to the brisa that we just saw. Hey Rebbe Eliezer, Ilema Rebbe Eliezer debayis. Maybe it's our previous brisa. Remember, what did Rebbe Eliezer say? He said anything that's attached to the ground is considered to be part of the house. So it's part of the real estate. So it can't be like Rebbe Eliezer, this brisa, because Rebbe Eliezer makes no distinction as to whether the item was a kli before or after it was attached to the ground. And furthermore, it doesn't seem to go like the Rabbanan either, because the Rabbanan say it makes no difference whether it was a kli before or after it was attached to the ground. As long as it wasn't built from the wall or the ground, it's considered to be detached, even if it's now cemented to the ground, and therefore should be considered a kli no matter what. So the Gemara says, but maybe that's not the machlokas between Rebbe Eliezer and the Chachamim as far as whether it's a kli or not. Dilma ainu time of the Rebbe Eliezer savra mocher bayin yafa mocher v'Rabbanan savri mocher bayin ra mocher. Maybe it's got nothing to do with whether we call that a kli, a separate kli, but rather when the seller sold the house, did he sell it generously to include any attached accoutrements, or did he not mean to sell all attached accoutrements and only meant to sell, like the Chachamim say, only things that are carved out of the ground or the wall? So maybe it's got nothing to do with the status of kli vis-a-vis the laws of Tumah. So the Ella Rebbe Eliezer de Kaveris Devorim. So maybe it's a different machlokas, Rebbe Eliezer and the Chachamim, that we're making reference to. Maybe it's the machlokas between Rebbe Eliezer and the Chachamim regarding a beehive. Now a beehive is something that bees construct, we know that, and they attach it usually to a tree or to some other structure that's attached to the ground. And the question is, does that beehive have the status of karka, of real estate, or does it have the status of something that's detached from the ground? Now, the reason why this is relevant is for a number of halachos. First of all, it's relevant that nan kaveris devorim Rabbi Eliezer Omer harehu kekarka. Rabbi Eliezer says it has the status of real estate, and therefore v'kos v'naleha pruzbol. And therefore, now we know the laws of pruzbol are that if you don't want a loan that someone owes you to be wiped out at Shemitah, you submit your promissory notes to Beis Din. The only way, however, that you can avoid that loan from being canceled is if the debtor owns a piece of real estate. If the debtor owns real estate, then the Beis Din secures that loan on the real estate and considers it as if it's already paid. So if the debtor owns a beehive, is that considered real estate or not, such that the debt will not be canceled? That's one ramification. Rebbe Eliezer says just owning a beehive is enough real estate to avoid the debt from being canceled. Ve'ena mekabelas tuma b'makoma, and furthermore, as long as the beehive remains embedded in the place where it was originally constructed, it's not subject to tumah because it's considered to be part of the ground. And the third ramification is v'haroda mimena b'Shabbos chayiv chatas. If a person were to pull out honey from that beehive on Shabbos, he would be doing a malacha of kotzer. He is harvesting something from the ground because the beehive is part of the ground, and therefore you're doing a malacha. But the Chachamim disagree, and the Chachamim say eina kekarka. It doesn't have the status of real estate, and therefore the three ramifications are ve'ein kosven alei pruzbol. You cannot use that as the secure real estate of the debtor. U'mekabelas tumah b'makoma. Furthermore, it's subject to being mekabel tumah because it's not real estate. And v'haroda b'mena b'Shabbos pater. And if a person harvests honey from it on Shabbos, he's not doing a malacha. It may be asr midrabanan, but he's not doing a malacha because it's not part of the ground. So maybe that's the machlokes that you want to say is inconsistent with this brisa, because this brisa says that something like a beehive, it would depend. Did it become a beehive before it was attached to the ground or after it was attached to the ground? This distinction that's being drawn between its structure before it is attached to the ground or after it's attached to the ground. And that distinction we never see in this machlokes either between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. So that's the suggestion of the Gemara at this point, and Amir Tzashem will pick it up tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.